Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cure for the Common Game. Today, in day number 60 of 100 Days of Magic, we're going to talk about Nemesis. So let's get to it. Avenger Indal. Nemesis did continue on the themes of Mercadian Mask. Nemesis was released in February of 2000. So, what are we at? 19 years old now? 143 cards, 44 rares, 44 uncommons, and 55 commons. So this was another small set. And Avenger and Doll, essentially you had, you turned any card in your hand into an exile. Remember from Alliances? That was the mana cost of exile. And this is really good repeatable removal if, it's let live, which is I guess all the problem with having a ability attached to a creature. But Blinding Angel, one of the most oppressive angels I've ever seen. The ability to just strip away somebody's combat step is just outstanding. And is it just me, or does the oh shoot, I'm not a huge comic book guy, but look at her hair. Oh, X-Men, the kid, can't think of her name. She's got the white locks and the red hair. Oh, help me out, y'all. You know what I'm talking about. I've always thought. Anyway, 2-4 for 5, and, I'm definitely going to run her in any kind of angel tribal, but she belongs in way more than that, especially if you can find a way to make her unblockable or whatnot, just to just to have no combat step. That's wild. Lynn Civvy. Now Lynn Civvy was so good. She was the rebel legend, and she got whatever size rebel you wanted. So good. Back then, we had smaller formats that we called block constructed, like you could have in Mercadian Mask, obviously Mercadian Mask, Nemesis, and Prophecy, and you built decks out of those, and it was kind of quasi supported. You could find it every once in a while, but she was so powerful, she got banned in that format. But that was pretty much it. Uh, Her lash knife thing there is just a thing that scares the living daylights out of me. I mean, that is, it's a sharpened blade at the end of a chain whip. I would end up cutting myself to shreds. But anyway, the ability to get whatever rebel you wanted, and then to get a rebel from the yard and put it on the bottom of your deck, and then search it out. It was so good. Seal of Cleansing. Now, there is an enchantment cycle that originated here in Nemesis. They are all seals. I believe it's a cycle, and normally I only do one of those, but I think I did three of them here. I'm not sure, two, three, something. Seal of Cleansing. Uh, they are enchantments that reproduce effects that we already had. Like this is the disenchant enchantment, and these are really good for the enchantment style decks that we're all brewing now. Spiritual Asylum. Now, creatures and lands have Shroud that you control, but when a creature attacks, this goes away. So, in decks where you don't use the combat step, this is an amazing thing that your creatures and lands have Shroud. And there's a lot of creatures. I know it sounds kind of counterproductive there, having your creatures have Shroud but not being able to attack with them. But there's plenty of creatures that we play without ever intending to swing with them. So Days. This was the set that gave us Days, and here again, subverting mana cost is a thing that they got to be real careful about. Parallax Tide. There was a cycle of parallaxes. They were all enchantments, and I believe they all cost 4 mana or close to that. They were all rare and had fading counters, and you removed a fading counter to do an effect, and of course fading, you remove a counter during your upkeep. Um, Parallax Tide was the big one because you could effectively you could take 3 lands away for a couple of turns, and that was just devastating because you would jump out ahead, and by the time they got those lands back, it was just unrecoverable. Rootwater Thief. We have another invitational card here. I can't. Should have done my research. Man, I can't remember the player whose card this is. Oh, I can't. It's so bad of me. But it's a really good merfolk. Just you get to start picking apart their library, exiling their win cons. Sea Hunter. Now I think there's 3 of these in this set. They are either mercenaries or rebels, but they don't work. I mean, like this one searches a merfolk and just puts it into play. Now, while that may not seem, amazing, you don't have to draw it. It doesn't take up your draw. It doesn't, casting it. It's just 3 mana, smack a merfolk into play. These cards are, now granted, they are not of the tribe. They help, but they're still amazingly good tribal cards. Seal of Removal, the blue seal, is the unsummon enchantment. Ascendant Even card. Now, this is Krovax after he was completed by Phyrexia. Completed, there's an A in there when you're talking about Phyrexian completion. Things are going to change around here. Now, Krovax had a crazy good mastery of the Flowstone on Wrath. As a matter of fact, the entire artificial plane of Wrath was made of Flowstone, which was the best comparison I can come up with is like living nanite kind of rock, if you will. And because it was an artificial plane made by Phyrexia. But he had such a mastery of it, he could just be standing in the middle of, flat plane and go to sit down. And by the time he got in the sitting formation, a throne would have risen up out of the ground out of Flowstone around him. That's how much of a mastery he had over the Flowstone. But anyway, game-wise, 6 mana, 3/3s. He flies, and other black creatures get +1. I mean, this was a beating on a stick because it killed all the 1/1s, and that was a bunch at the time. It's still not bad. Still not bad at all. Knight of Souls Betrayal costs you 4 mana, and it's not on a 3/3 body. It doesn't help the rest of your team, and it doesn't do commander damage. I mean, I like Ascendant Evencar. Now, black got one of these, green got one of these. They were Death Pit Offering and Overlaid Terrain, I believe. We'll get to it in a minute. But there were 4 mana enchantments that when they came into play, you sacrificed all of whatever they did. Like here, you sacrificed all creatures you control, but your creatures get +2/+2. Now this is not a common thing to happen in black. Anthem effects don't really happen a lot. I mean, we got the Blood Moon, I guess, but this is just creatures you control, doesn't matter what color they are. And, it doesn't see a lot of play, and my thing is, well, I'll just play it before I cast any creatures. In a perfect world, we're playing this on 2 off of our turn 1 Soul Ring, but that doesn't always happen. Massacre. This was the original card we called the Black Wrath because it was free. Now, in our format, somebody is going to have a plains, and we're going to have a swamp if we're playing black, obviously. But, man, all creatures get -2/-2. This is an early board sweeper to get rid of those birds and bobs and what have you. It's killed a lot of creatures. Now, Vollrath the Fallen is a deck I've done quite a while ago. It was essentially big creatures. Vollrath was the original Evencar of Wrath, and I love the flavor text. I stepped out. I did not step down. He vanished. Well, the reason why he vanished is he assumed he shapeshifted into one of the Weatherlight crew and just rode aboard the Weatherlight learning stuff. And while he was on this, because he couldn't tell anybody, there was a fight for the throne, essentially, in Wrath. Urtai was a part of it, Krovax was a part of it, and eventually, when he did come back, Krovax killed Vollrath, injecting him with these nanites. I mean, oh, yeah, it was. But anyway, you discard a creature card where it gets plus the mana cost, and this is one of those cards. I'm actually running Draco in this deck just because it is a 16 mana card. So shout out to the Commander Cookout podcast. They do every deck they do a milk list, and Draco's always at that 16 drop slot. Here's a deck, Ryan and Brando, that I run Draco in. Merry Christmas. Mogcatcher, a mercenary that goes and gets goblins. Now this one, obviously, I want to say that goblins have a little more of a presence in our game than the merfolk do. I want to say there's more goblin cards that exist than merfolk. I could be wrong, but just to get a goblin and smack it into play from your library seems really good. Shrieking Mog. Now, this is at 2 mana haste, and tap all other creatures. More times than not, when we cast this, we're not playing it because it's a hasty 1/1. We're playing it to tap the board, especially if we have no untap effects of some sort. But Shrieking Mog, it's a really good goblin. Animate land. Now, yes, I know this is crazy, but y'all remember Eradicate from the Urza Destiny? Yeah, this was a thing that I did, and I know a lot of people did. You would animate somebody's land, and then you would eradicate it so they didn't have any more copies of that land in their deck. Now, they would still have the ones that were left in play, but they were not... if you go up against somebody playing mono white or mono anything, you can animate their land, eradicate it, and they have no more of that basic land type. It is dirty. And it's what? I don't know. Overlay terrain is the green one. You got to sack all your lands. Now, this one is a little sketchier, but to have your lands tapped for 2 of any color is very tempting. It's very tempting now. But sacking all your lands, you want this early. As a matter of fact, just about probably the only way you're going to cast it is if you do turn 1 Soul Ring, turn 2 Overlay Terrain, and you're losing, 2 lands? That's still putting you back a ton. But if you have a mana-hungry deck of many colors, I don't know. I want there to be something here. And to be honest with you, maybe Windgrace is the right place for it. Rocks. Another super trample creature. This time it has 3 mana regenerate, and it's a 5/5 instead of the 7/7 Thorn Elemental. Another entrant into that super trample deck that my son built years ago. I'll eventually end up translating that to EDH. I think there's probably, I don't know, I don't think there's 10 of them, but it might fit a decent theme of some sort. Sky Shroud Claim. Now, the beautiful part here is 2 forest cards. Most of the time, nowadays, we have shocks. Back then, we were super excited. I can get 2 savannas off of it, or a savanna and a bayou. But those are a little cost prohibitive now. So now we've got shocks, and since we're back in Ravnica, we got a whole new round of shocks to choose from. So even if you're just getting basic forest, it puts them straight into play. They're not tapped. They're usable. Sky Shroud Poacher gets the elf. Now, elf is one tribe that there's... they don't need to make any more elf cards. I hope they do because I love elves, but they don't really need to because elves are just super strong as they are. And, the ability to just search one up into play, pretty good. Belle Bay's Portal. If you'll notice the tribal theme starting here, this is essentially, I don't, Belle Bay's Portal versus a Quicksilver Amulet. The Quicksilver Amulet's 4 to cast, 4 to use, so it's 8 total that first time, and it's any creature. Belle Bay is 5 to cast, 3 to use, but you can only drop of that creature type. I don't know that restriction is entirely necessary if it's going to cost you the same amount of mana, although the more you use it, the cheaper it actually gets overall. But I've always thought that this should have been 3 to cast, 3 to use if you're going to be restricted to a creature type. Maybe this is something that they can do later on, somebody else's portal. Eladamri's portal there, who knows. Kill Switch. Ooh. Kill Switch took a big bump when Atraxa came out. I mean, it shuts down a good chunk of the deck. And but in order to get full value out of it, this kind of needs to be your only artifact. I use it in a lot of green decks that, are not crutching on artifacts as much. Predator Flagship, I think one of the best permanent removal spells there are. You can give your team flying, which is great in decks where you're not inherently flying. I mean, if you're playing dinosaurs, big giant flying Galthas are not something people want to deal with. And then if they do have blockers, you can destroy creatures with flying. I love the Predator Flagship. I love the dichotomy of the perfect duel in between the Predator Flagship and the Weatherlight. This ship just looks evil, and the Weatherlight just looks so pure and good. Tangle Wire, another one of those Staxious type cards with the fading. And the beautiful part about Tangle Wire is at the beginning of each player's upkeep, the player taps an untapped artifact, creature, or land for each fade counter on it. We have a +1 to this because we can always tap the Tangle Wire. It doesn't really do anything to it. So we can tap the Tangle Wire as to not. And there were cards that let you add fading counters, to keep it around longer. But Core Haven. Oh my God, I have a story about Core Haven. This is okay. I was online at this time. We had stepped up into the big world and had gotten a web TV. So I had jumped on this new thing called eBay at the time, and I was watching spoilers because it was a thing that had happened. Now, granted, we didn't get them like we had today. It was a completely different ball of wax back then, so I saw Core Haven, and I thought Core Haven was the greatest land ever made. And I was just so I ordered a playset because they started off, they were like $1. And I ordered another one and another one. The more I got to thinking about it, I was like, I'm just gonna. And I think I bought 20 copies of Core Haven. And I did it all so quick. I got them before I had ordered them all before the first set came in. Now, keep in mind, this was my pre-EDH days. I was playing 60-card Magic like most of the rest of the world. And I got them in. I had built a deck around it, and I got them in and shoved them in that deck and went to goldfish it out to see what a hand looked like. And that was when I realized it's legendary. Yeah. Because my whole thing was getting several of them in play and just preventing all the combat damage. And I was like, oh, no. But luckily, over the course of the next dozen years or so, I traded them off one here, one there. But I think I'm down to a couple now. But, yeah, always, yeah. This was my first. I was trying to get them before the price spiked, because I was for certain that they would. It's not like, back then words like market manipulation didn't exist or whatever. It's not like I did with the Rogue's Passage, where I doubled the value of Rogue's Passage overnight. Ooh, from 3 cents to a dime, I think. Oh, triple, actually. But anyway, Corehaven, great card. Wrath's Edge, the red legendary. I don't understand. Yeah, see, y'all know me. I think every card is potentially playable. All cards are playable in the right deck. But now, okay, so Tetra Cutlass, no big deal. 4 mana tap, sack a land to deal 1 damage. Now, if we're running a deck where we get value out of sacking lands, this is possibly playable. However, at the 4 mana activation, I'm sure there are better cards to sack lands too. This is a land, so you can't really give it Death Touch. Your land give death. I mean, I guess you could turn it into a creature and then give the creature Death Touch. That's an awful lot of work, though. But it is something convoluted that I would like. Not gonna lie. And I believe Terrain Generator is our last card. This is an amazing land. This may be one of the cards that I can see going in most decks. I hate to say, I don't even think Soul Ring belongs in every deck, because it doesn't. But Terrain Generator may be as close as it actually gets to a card that belongs in every deck. The ability to just dump extra lands, even if you've got landfall triggers, that's great. But even not, people destroying lands doesn't happen a lot. And the fact that this is a land that makes more lands is simplistically beautiful. I love it. And that's what we've got for Nemesis. So I do appreciate y'all watching. Y'all let me know what you think. And I've recorded several of these up, so hopefully I'll keep them going. May have some other random content here and there for the 100 days, but this is what I'll be doing while filling in the gaps, I guess. I appreciate y'all watching, and we will see y'all tomorrow.